Imagine this for a second. You're in a consultation with a patient, someone you've known for years, an adult with chronic care needs. And you start to realize their finances are being systematically drained by a relative.
Mm.
Or maybe it's a new patient. They disclose some escalating domestic abuse, and they subtly flinch every time you move a bit too quickly.
Yeah, that's a tough situation.
It's an immediate dilemma, isn't it? It's this huge professional challenge of, well, how do you prioritize their immediate safety, but at the same time respect their fundamental autonomy?
That's the core tension.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're diving into the essential framework for adult safeguarding. It's one of the most high-stakes and pressurized areas in professional standards.
Absolutely.
So in this deep dive, we're going to cover the full legal backbone. We're talking about the CARE Act 2014 and the specific protocols for domestic abuse, so things like the DAS age assessment and the MARAC process.
Which are life-saving, really.
Our mission today really is to give you a shortcut, a clear, kind of reliable, stepwise structure for handling these scenarios. We want to nail down the legal duties, the key priorities, and I guess most importantly, how to apply genuinely person-led protections.
And how to avoid the pitfalls.
Exactly. All while avoiding those major traps that can catch out even, experienced practitioners.
And what's fascinating here is how the law really forces precision.
Right.
We have to start with the foundational definition.
Okay.
The definition of adult safeguarding from the CARE Act 2014, because that dictates our entire duty. Safeguarding only applies if the adult meets three specific non-negotiable criteria.
3 criteria.
Right.
What are they?
So first, they must have care and support needs. That's number one.
Simple enough.
Second, they have to be experiencing or at risk of abuse or neglect.
Care needs and risk.
And third, and this is a key bit, they must be unable to protect themselves because of those needs. If someone doesn't have care needs, or if they have full capacity and the ability to protect themselves, will they fall outside this specific safeguarding framework?
That third point, that feels like the real linchpin here. If I'm looking at these scenarios, how do I practically assess unable to protect themselves? I mean, is that about physical ability or cognitive capacity or?
It's often a mix of things. It could be coercive control, it could be a mental impairment. But if those 3 criteria are likely met, and you don't need certainty, just likelihood.
Just a strong suspicion.
Exactly. That's what triggers the single most important legal mechanism in the whole UK system. The Section 42 duty to inquire.
Section 42, so that's the number to remember.
It is. And that S42 duty, it falls squarely to the local authority. So when you make a compliant referral, you are activating a powerful, legally mandated process.
So you're not just passing a buck,
Okay.
you're triggering a formal process.
You are. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, GMC guidance requires us to take prompt, proactive action when safety is at risk. So, understanding S42 is really the difference between fulfilling that professional duty
And just, what, giving them a leaflet?
and just offering passive signposting. Exactly.
Okay, so S42 defines the local authority's duty, but that duty can often conflict with autonomy, right? We all know that if we just rush in to fix a situation, we can risk alienating the patient and, potentially making things even worse.
And that's why the entire process is underpinned by this essential philosophy. It's known as making safeguarding personal, or MSP.
MSP, I've heard that.
This concept is absolutely pivotal. MSP shifts the focus away from a sort of procedural rescue
Right.
to an outcome-focused engagement. It means we stop assuming we know what's best, and instead we ask the adult what outcomes they actually want to achieve.
Which might not be the outcome we would choose for them.
And we have to be prepared to accept outcomes that involve continued risk, as long as the adult has the capacity to make that choice. And crucially, as long as we've minimized the risk as much as possible through a multi-agency plan.
So it's an exercise in respecting their autonomy, but with a safety net?
A very active safety net.
MSP sounds great in theory, but I mean, practically, how do we respect their wishes if they want to stay with an abuser, for example? Or if they refuse any external help? Doesn't the sheer severity of the risk sometimes have to override MSP?
It creates a constant tension. It really does. And that tension is managed by the 6 principles of adult safeguarding.
Ah, okay. And there's a mnemonic for this, isn't there?
There is, yeah. A lot of professionals use PPPPA. It's a bit of a mouthful, with the crucial addition of E for empowerment.
Right. So let me see if I remember. It's empowerment, prevention, proportionality.
Protection, partnership, and accountability. You got it. These principles have to be consciously applied to every single decision.
And I think we need to hone in on one of those in particular. Proportionality. This seems to be the concept that trips people up the most.
I agree.
If we're looking for a really actionable insight, what does proportionality actually mean in a clinical setting?
It just means the action taken has to be the least intrusive response that's appropriate to the level of risk.
Least intrusive. Yeah.
Let's use a quick contrast. Say you discover a minor financial exploitation concern. Instantly calling the police and demanding the adult be moved out of their home is, well, it's completely disproportionate.
Very over the top.
A conversation, some supportive financial advice, a S42 referral so the local authority can investigate, that might be appropriate.
Okay, that makes sense.
But conversely, if the person has been strangled or threatened with a weapon, one of those high-risk scenarios we'll get to, then just having a friendly chat and offering a leaflet is wildly disproportionate to the severe risk.
So it's a failure in the other direction.
A massive failure.
Yeah.
That situation demands immediate high-level protection, almost certainly involving the police.
That distinction is incredibly helpful. And speaking of high-risk situations, let's move specifically to domestic abuse. The principles of MSP and proportionality. They still apply, I assume.
They absolutely still apply, but the risk profile demands its own dedicated tools.
Right.
First off, we have to operate using the updated definition from the Domestic Abuse Act, 2021. This definition is crucial because it legally includes controlling and coercive behavior.
And that's so important.
It's vital because that subtle psychological mechanism is often what stops a victim from seeking help or leaving in the first place.
And what else did that act change?
It also explicitly recognizes children as victims if they see, hear, or otherwise experience the effects of the abuse.
So even if the primary victim is an adult, we have a simultaneous safeguarding duty to any kids in that environment.
A direct duty.
Yes. That inclusion of coercive control and acknowledging children as secondary victims, that fundamentally changes the scope of our responsibility. So once we have a disclosure or even just a high suspicion, we need a standard way to quantify that risk. What are the tools we have to use?
The first essential tool is the DASH checklist.
DASH.
That mnemonic stands for domestic abuse, stalking, harassment, and honor-based violence. It's the standardized risk assessment tool used right across the country. By systematically running through that checklist, you objectively quantify the severity of the threat.
Okay, so DAH is the assessment. What happens if it flags a high risk?
If the DAH score comes back high, or if your professional judgment tells you there's a severe threat regardless of the score, the case escalates to the MARAC.
The Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conference.
Exactly. MARAC is designed specifically for the highest risk domestic abuse cases. It makes sure that police, housing, health, social care, everyone coordinates a unified, robust safety plan.
So DAH is the bridge. It's the thing that determines whether a case stays managed locally or if it needs to activate that full multi-agency coordination of MARAC.
That's a perfect way of putting it.
Okay, let's get into the immediate intervention. Sources point out these specific red flags where we have to, essentially bypass consent and act urgently. What are those triggers?
Well, this raises that critical question of when safety just has to override patient choice. You must intervene urgently when you encounter immediate threats to life. So, explicit threats to kill, any history of strangulation or choking, or the presence or use of weapons.
Non-negotiable red flags.
Absolutely. Also, any signs of extreme coercive control that stop you from speaking to the patient alone, or any evidence of a recent serious injury or sexual assault. All of those demand an urgent police and safeguarding response.
Which brings us perfectly to the high-yield, stepwise framework, the logic you need to just apply instantly in one of these high-pressure moments.
The step-by-step guide.
Exactly. We call this framework SAFE 42. It's the ordered logic for action.
SAFE 42, I like it.
So safety now. Ask, that's the MSP bit. Form DASH. Inquire-42. Let's take those first steps. So, step 1, make safe and listen.
This is the absolute first action. You have to see the adult alone. If you can't guarantee privacy, you are elevating the risk.
You're putting them in more danger.
Massively. Then you assess immediate risk, and, crucially, you assess their capacity to make a reasoned decision about their safety.
Okay, so privacy, safety, capacity, then what?
Well, once you've established that, you transition into assessment. If domestic abuse is suspected, you complete the DSH assessment immediately.
So that's the F in SAFE Form D.
Exactly. And if the S42 criteria care needs, abuse risk, inability to protect are met, you initiate the inquiry by referring to adult social care.
And that's the whole first part of the mnemonic. Okay, what follows those foundational letters?
We move to the numbers, the 4 and the 2. The 4 represents the 4 related actions that make sure your decisions are lawful and effective.
Okay, 4 actions.
Share minimally. Record the lawful basis for that sharing. Set a safety plan. And partner with specialist services like an IDVA or ISVA.
That's a great way to remember the documentation in the support layer. And finally, the 2.
The 2 is a simple reminder about the 2-tiered system for domestic abuse. If the risk is high, it goes to MARAC. So, DA MARAC. If you use that structured flow, your action is consistently GMC aligned, protective, and, well, defensible.
Defensible is a key word there. Now we have to turn to the area where most practitioners, and I think most trainees, really stumble. The pitfalls, specifically information sharing and the very complex issue of consent.
The most common and frankly the most dangerous pitfall is the misapplication of confidentiality. So often, practitioners worry so much about breaking patient trust that they refuse to share information, even when serious harm is likely or imminent.
That is precisely the ethical tightrope, isn't it? So what is the clear-cut rule from the GMC? When can we or when must we override confidentiality?
You are mandated by GMC guidance to share information without consent when it's necessary to prevent or mitigate serious harm.
Serious harm. There it is again.
To the patient or to others. Or to detect or prevent serious crime. Or where the public interest demonstrably overrides the duty of confidence. Your legal duty to protect life and prevent serious harm outweighs the duty to keep secrets.
But overriding consent, it requires that proportionality we talked about.
It absolutely does. When you share without consent, you must stick to that principle. Share the minimum necessary information and only on a strict need-to-know basis.
And document it.
And I cannot stress this enough, you must document the exact lawful basis for sharing and your reasoning for why that action was proportionate.
That documentation step really is the safety net for the practitioner, isn't it?
It is.
So let's quickly identify the low-scoring answers in a decision-making context. The traps that fail the test of safety and proportionality.
Good idea.
Okay, trap number 1. Waiting for proof or certainty before acting. This feels like a cognitive trap.
It is. Safeguarding acts on risk and suspicion, not proof. If the risk is high, you have to act. Let the statutory services do the investigation.
Trap number 2. Passive signposting.
The leaflet.
The leaflet. Just giving a leaflet or suggesting they call a helpline, that's just inadequate.
It completely omits your duty to assess, to complete a DHH, and to initiate an S42 inquiry if the criteria are met. You have to initiate the professional protection pathway.
Okay, trap number 3. Discussing the concern or the disclosure in front of the suspected perpetrator.
Or even just in a non-private public space.
It seems obvious, but it happens.
It does. And it exponentially increases the risk to the adult and severely blocks any further disclosure. Safety and privacy are just non-negotiable prerequisites.
And the final trap.
Finally, violating that really floater. Making safeguarding personal principle. Taking action that ignores the adult's wishes, particularly if they have established capacity, is a major ethical failure.
Yeah.
You have to work with them, ensuring safety nets are in place, but respecting their autonomy is foundational.
Okay, let's bring all of this back together. This deep dive has, I hope, provided a clear structure for handling this complex interaction between law, ethics, and immediate action.
I think we've established 3 core truths for you to take away. 1, act on risk immediately. Prioritize safety and privacy by making sure you see the adult alone to assess that immediate risk and their capacity.
And 2, use the official tools and pathways. The CARE Act S42 triggers the local authority's duty to inquire, and the DASH assessment is what leads to MIT for the highest risk domestic abuse cases.
And 3, make your action both personal and protective. Make sure your response is person-led, that's MSP, and when you must share information, do it lawfully, do it minimally, and document your rationale thoroughly.
As a final sort of provocative thought to leave with, we noted that even complex self-neglect can sometimes count under S42 criteria.
Yes, like severe hoarding that creates an immediate fire risk, for example.
Right, and that just reminds us that vulnerability is broad, and it requires this multi-agency planning that extends way beyond obvious third-party abuse.
And when you're faced with severe, complex self-neglect, the ultimate dilemma is this. How do we, and how do the specialized safeguarding teams balance an adult's fundamental right to choose how they live against their equally vital right to life safety.
It's the continuous balancing act of professional practice, isn't it?
It really is.
We really hope this deep dive into S42, DASH, and MR has given you the confidence and the structure you need for these high-stakes clinical scenarios. Remember, structured decision-making is the key to success.
It is.
And be sure to review your professional resources. And, of course, check out passthemsra.com for further guidance on making these critical decisions under pressure.
Act fast, act proportionately, and document everything.
That's all for today's deep dive. We'll see you next time.